Should The Crow just have stayed dead? Let's talk about it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back. The Eye of the Storm podcast. Before we get straight into our discussion, we are here to give you movie recommendations. So, guys, what's the best recent thing that you've seen?
So my best recent thing this week is Black Rain, which is a 1989 Ridley Scott movie, essentially about a Yakuza member who gets captured in New York and is then escorted back to Japan by these two New York cops, who then promptly lose him, and they essentially get drawn into the investigation to get him back into custody because they're being blamed for it, and so they have to clear their name. And that also then drags them into this Yakuza gang war. And that is basically the story. So it's not the greatest movie, but it's kind of interesting in that it was made in the 80s when everybody thought Japan would take over the world. So it's kind of an American movie about an American cop who goes to Japan and is kind of confronted with how much better everybody in Japan is. Everybody is more intelligent, more disciplined, more sophisticated, more professional, everything. And these 80s renegade cops are colliding with Japanese culture, especially the way Japanese police work, who are just police officers. They're not out of an action movie. And it gets increasingly cartoonish, and the main cop, played by Michael Douglas, is increasingly unhinged. But there's some interesting things in there, and it's mostly a window into how the American public saw Japan in 1989. And what's interesting about the movie is that this movie was decried as racist in the US, but it was celebrated in Japan. It won awards in Japan and I think in another Asian country. And it apparently made all the money on Japanese VHS rentals. So it's apparently really popular in Japan. But at home, it kind of was criticized for how it portrayed Japan. So it was an interesting watch on that front.
What was it called again?
Black Rain. And Black Rain is a reference to the rain in Hiroshima after the nuclear bomb strikes, where the villain survived a nuclear bomb attack. And he talked about what that experience was like. And he says something like, America turned the rain black, and I will never forget that. And that is kind of his villain motivation. But that's like being said in an American movie, right? So it's interesting from this kind of the circumstances of how this movie was made is kind of more interesting than the movie itself. But there's an interesting kind of window into kind of what was on people's minds during that time.
Cool.
I don't actually have one for the people this week. I had a busy weekend, was here, there, and everywhere, and didn't get a chance to properly sit down and watch anything. So go and watch Black Rain.
All right, cool. Well, I was planning on doing like a movie marathon in the cinema, and I kind of did, but I didn't. I only ended up watching 2 movies, which was obviously the film that we're going to discuss next. But another film was Blink Twice. This was the film starring Channing Tatum and obviously a couple of other notable actors as well. You got, I forgot how to pronounce her name, but Adria Arjona. She was in the film Hitman, but she wasn't the main character. The main character was Naomi Aki. She was playing Frida. So pretty much billionaire tech guy, which was Channing Tatum. He was a billionaire tech guy. He met a waitress. He invited her and her friend to their private island for like a vacation, but he literally invited her on the day. And then on the day, during the vacation, weird stuff happened where like they're getting amnesia. Like they don't remember what happened the previous day. And she pretty much tries to figure out what the hell happened, or like what the hell is pretty much going on during this vacation. And it took a very dark turn. This film definitely has a lot of metaphors and it's symbolic, heavily symbolic. I was actually surprised, like certain scenes that you'll see in this film, you wouldn't really expect it to be shown. It felt very mature. It's just something that you wouldn't have expected in this day and age for a film like that. Like the scenes that you see, you wouldn't have expected it in this day and age because we live in a very sensitive generation. So it definitely was an important topic to be discussed. Which was SA. There's a lot of, there's SA. Just watch the film and you see what the hell I'm talking about. Sorry. It's very hard to
handles that topic maturely and does interesting things with it.
Yes. Apologies. Because I'm trying to like not spoil it. That's why I was kind of stuttering a lot because I was like, how the hell am I gonna say what it's, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, but go watch the film. It's a good film. It's a solid film. Yeah, let's just get straight into it. The Crow.
All right, so just to briefly summarize the movie, The Crow is a remake of a 1994 film which is based on a comic book. It's essentially about this guy who has had a rough start in life, and in rehab he meets his girlfriend and they have this intense romance, and then they get dragged into the machinations of the rich and powerful, which ends up getting both of them killed. And he kind of makes a deal with some kind of supernatural entity that turns him into this figure of vengeance. And then he goes on a killing spree to avenge his girlfriend, essentially. And that's basically the plot. So what were your impressions of The Crow?
You know what? Yeah, I wasn't expecting much from this movie when I first saw the trailer. It was like, it gave very dark emo vibes. Not really my type of movies. I would still go watch it in cinema though, like, because obviously it was a revenge film. I freaking love revenge movies. They're just my thing. It was a solid film. I'm so confused by the reaction, public reaction. When I say solid, it wasn't a great movie. There was a lot of problems, yeah, but it was just a solid revenge movie. Like it had a clear, like, what it was trying to do. It was a straightforward plot. I'm so confused on why people were slating this film, talking about it as one of the worst movies they've ever seen. Now, okay, I did some research and I understand, 'cause I haven't seen the first movie. So people are arguing that was it some sort of sequel or just a remake of the first one, and they're saying how they done a terrible job for Evil Once. I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to understand, but god damn, like, people have described this film as like one of the worst films like made this year. And I'm like, no way. I don't know what you guys are watching. I don't know like how far off from the original movie, the first movie that came out it is. But for me, it was dark. There were grotesque moments which I liked. I didn't really like the villain too much. I felt like there wasn't really much going on for him. Like, he just had a couple of moments where it was a bit dark with his voice, but that's about it. I didn't really see the power behind him, as in like the threat behind him. There wasn't really much besides him whispering in your ears. And even the showdown in between the two, I was like, oh, okay, there wasn't really much going on there. But besides that, I don't know why there was so much hatred for this movie. I just think it was a solid film.
I don't know about calling this a solid movie. This was not good. It's not the disaster that everyone is piecing out to be, but it's not good whatsoever. It has loads of different components which could have had potential, but it just wastes all of it, and none of what it tries to do lands at all. I mean, it spends too much of the first portion of the movie trying to build up this like love story, which I was not invested in at all. And it was really weird because it seemed like Shelley was the main character of the movie for like the first part of the movie, and I was like we're not getting enough information, a backstory, understanding as to sort of what his character is. It just seemed like he was too consumed by the Shelley character, and she was kind of playing too much of a focal point in the movie for a person that shouldn't really have been sort of that heavily focused on. And again, with like some of the supernatural aspects of it, like the villain having sort of this deal with the devil, essentially, which I don't think is a spoiler because we're not in the spoiler section yet. But with the villain also like having to deal with the devil and this, that, and the other, and like what kind of comes from it, it's just not explored enough. You don't really understand too much about it. The movie doesn't dig deep enough into the different concepts it brings out. Even like the whole like the Crow situation and like scenes in terms of like the afterlife scenes and sort of how he's becoming the Crow and this, that, and the other, and essentially some of the rules and stipulations behind it. Like it's just not explored as deeply as it probably should have in this movie. And I feel like a lot of that is because they spent almost like an hour trying to build up this damn relationship at the start of the movie, which was just such a waste of runtime. Genuinely, I was like there just like waiting for the movie to end, because like by the time it even gets to any of like the cool parts towards it at the end of the movie, I was fully checked out. I was like, I'm not here for this movie. I just want this to be over with so I can leave and go home.
Yeah, I think the response to this movie kind of scales with how much people care about the 1994 movie. So I've also not seen it. I tried to watch it, but I kept falling asleep, which is not a dig on the movie. It's just where I was at that point, and I ran out of time to watch in preparation for this. So I have not seen more than the first 20 minutes of it. So I approached this movie as kind of its own thing, kind of broadly knowing what the original was about. And I agree that it's not that bad, and I think it actually comes in three parts. The first part is Eric's and Shelley's relationship and how they basically pull each other away from the brink in not the healthiest way, right? They don't have exactly the healthiest relationship, but it works for them, and it's probably the best thing that's happened to both of them, right, in their lives. And then the second part is after Shelley dies, where Eric becomes the Crow and he conducts his investigation where he tracks down his killers and takes revenge on them. And then the third part, I think, is the showdown between him and the villain. And I think the middle part is quite good. I really enjoyed myself in the middle part. I think the third part, the showdown with the villain, doesn't make any sense. And the first part is an hour long. And there's a reason why the original movie started with the murder of the Crow and the girlfriend. Right, that happens in the first 2 minutes, and then it goes from there. And here we insert an entire hour of story in front of that, essentially making it a prequel. Over half of the movie is essentially a prequel to the original, if like you can think of it in those terms. And that's a massive mistake. Like I think we agree that that first hour should not have been there, or shouldn't have been as long as it is. Mm-hmm. And I think by the time that hour is up, it's lost almost everybody. And there's good stuff to come after that. It's just by that point, everybody is some combination of pissed off and asleep.
One thing I will agree on is Eric's story. I think it wasn't given to us. Like, it pretty much felt non-existent. There was even a scene where they're in the bathtub, and then I think he must have asked her, "What do you like about me?" or something like that. And then she said, "How
What's
broken
the first thing you liked about me?" Something like that.
Yeah, and then she pretty much says something about how broken you are, or something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, we didn't see that. All we saw was the guy holding like barbed wire, and obviously the horse, him holding barbed wire or something like that, and his hand bleeding, and something briefly with his mum. I think someone said that. I don't know who mentioned that, but something with his mum.
Well, the idea was that he comes from a broken home. He basically is basically a decent person, and he gets punished every time he tries to help somebody. He was the one who tried to save the horse, and when he tried to save the horse, he got punished for it because he got these scars on his hand from the barbed wire, and the horse didn't make it either. So he got scarred for life, and it didn't even accomplish anything. Meanwhile, his mother was like on meth on a couch in a trailer, completely useless, right? So that scene was supposed to show his upbringing, right, and how neglected he was, and how dysfunctional it was, and how he basically didn't have a chance from the start. And that is how he ends up in rehab. Like, I think if the first hour had just been a movie on its own, I think it would be a perfectly fine streaming movie about somebody who goes to rehab and meets the love of his life, and it turns his life around. The problem is it's in a Crow movie, right? If it was a separate movie, I think it would have been perfectly fine for a different audience. My point in all of it is just, I think it makes sense, and I think I have a decent sense on who Eric and Shelley are. I just don't like them, and I don't want them in my superhero movie.
I hear what you're saying, but for me, it just didn't feel enough, because like I just couldn't feel how broken the character was, especially to the point where it's like, okay, you're so broken to the point where you've fallen in love with this girl, where you would exchange your soul for it, like you would exchange your soul for her. Like a sane person, someone who didn't go through the traumatic experiences he went through, he wouldn't have done that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and so it's like, cool. He did that because obviously he loves her, but at the same time, his trauma contributes to that, which contributes to his decision of actually exchanging his soul for hers. But I just didn't see the brokenness. Cool, I understand you don't have to show full doses of things. Sometimes you can just show like a little moment, and then that should give you what you need to know as an audience. But for me, it was like, it just felt snappy. Like, it was just like, okay, there's still not enough throughout the film. I want to see more of his trauma, more of his brokenness, to kind of like justify his decision in terms of like how, just to justify his decision in terms of exchanging soul. I didn't see that. I'm like, oh, okay, so they've just pretty much, it's like they've just fallen in love because that's just the way that the story goes. So that was my issue with it.
They certainly fall in love because the script says so. But one thing they did sell me on was that she was the first person to show him kindness in his, like, ever.
What was confusing about that though was, like, at the start I thought he was in prison because they show him kind of getting like roughed up, and essentially he was like kind of like being bullied in this like particular place, and like the guards seem to be allowing it to happen or whatever, if I remember that correctly. So I was so confused when Shelley walked in, because like the whole time I'm thinking, okay, this is a prison, and then she walked in and I was like, okay, maybe in this universe it's a mixed prison. And then it turned out to be a rehab place, and I was like completely confused by like kind of like that opening as to sort of what they were trying to set up in that sense. But I think I agree with what you guys are saying in terms of like there just wasn't enough there to like properly convince me that, you know, that little boy that we saw at the start of the movie. I mean, like when you kind of explain it, you can kind of like see it, but it's not explicit enough to like properly understand Eric as a character for for us to understand that he is this kind of like this kind soul or whatever who's just like had this like troubled upbringing and is like that's led to him sort of being in the situation that he's in. I feel like they just needed to give us more of that, but then they chose to opt with having Shelley as more of the main focus at the start, which just for me didn't help kind of like get familiar with the character.
Yeah.
So, quick question. So, what is this film actually supposed to be? Is it supposed to be a sequel, prequel, or a remake?
It's a remake.
A remake. Okay. So now this is making more sense as to why there's so much outrage. Okay, I understand from the audience perspective, even though we're the audience, but as in like other people's perspective, why they're angry. But in terms of you, like, would you say that it's the fact? Wait, Hervé, have you seen? Because I know Daniel, you've watched the remake. I mean, you've watched the original. Hervé, have you seen the original?
Tried. I didn't succeed.
You didn't succeed.
No, I didn't get a chance to. I wanted to, but I didn't get a chance to.
Okay, so pretty much this is a new movie to everyone. So you guys just genuinely didn't like it.
No, like genuinely, this is
crazy. But why? Like, I know you said, yeah, you briefly said it, but what about it didn't work for you guys?
So making the stuff before he becomes a crow an hour long is just a massive mistake. Like he is not that interesting and he's not that complex a character for us to understand why he's driven by revenge. Like you can establish that very quickly. I think the original movie spends like 2 minutes on it, and maybe more than 2 minutes is like the sweet spot is somewhere below 1 hour and above 2 minutes, right? Like maybe if it had been 10 minutes, it would have been okay. But it's just excruciatingly long, like, and I don't need it just to be 100 minutes of just the crow beating up people, but like there's just not much interesting happening in the first hour. Like they are not likable people. They're kind of, on the one hand, completely marginalized and they've accomplished nothing with their lives, right? But at the same time, she's also extremely wealthy and they can just treat the world as a playground and have no worries, really. But that juxtaposition just did not work for me at all in terms of making them likable. Like if they were struggling to pay rent or if they're working terrible jobs just to have a job, that would make them more likable a little bit. Like they're still really unlikable as people. But the fact that they're also so wealthy that they can just get high and go dancing all day and night, and that's all they do with their lives, makes them extra unlikable, at least to me.
It doesn't help that Shelley's character was so monotone anytime she was like speaking.
Yeah.
It just sounded like she was just like so slow in everything that she was saying. Like she literally had like one emotion for everything, and it was just like so grating every time like she was like speaking in this movie. And again, for something that's meant to sort of really motivate the character, and this is meant to be like his driving force. Again, you just have to sell it better than what they did in this movie, and it just wasn't convincing. And like Daniel said, it was just like kind of like hard to, and like they spent too much time of sort of them trying to like sort of trying to show this love by them just like sleeping with each other in like loads of different places. And I'm like, okay, like this is not gonna pull on the heartstrings of people by just like showing them like sleeping together in like bathtubs or like in the bed and this that, and the other. What's actually quite interesting, I know Daniel you didn't like juxtaposition, but it's actually quite interesting because you do have like those like rich kids who like maybe have too much freedom in this world, and they end up going bad and they end up like sort of down in like a dark path of like doing drugs and this that, and the other. And then you have like this one kid who kind of grew up poor, looks like he grew up in like a trailer home or whatever. And they could have like done something interesting with that in terms of like their backgrounds or whatever. Even though it's not, it shouldn't have been like this big thing in the movie. But considering you are making it a big thing, they could have done it a little bit more with that to try and maybe even just highlight like no matter where you come from or whatever, like you can always like kind of like end up down this path, and like how you like try and like pull each other out, and like maybe using their different like backgrounds to try and like help each other and support each other through their different life experiences or something like that. Like that could have been a little bit more interesting than just showing montages of them getting on.
Yeah. And to be clear, they're not unlikable because they're wealthy, but it's this juxtaposition of we're supposed to pity them and they're supposed to be completely down on their luck and beaten down by life, but also they live in a penthouse and have an infinite drug budget. It's those two things don't work together. Like from the moment they escape rehab, every problem they have seems self-inflicted. because they could just have a nice life just with the money they have at that moment.
Mhm.
But the movie plays it as if they are these tragic characters, like these star-crossed lovers who like life keeps beating them down, but actually it doesn't. Not at that point. And I don't really understand. Like I think it's interesting that like all this wealth was bought from a deal with the devil, right? Because Shelley's mother worked for Vincent, the demonic crime king. And like I thought there was something interesting going on there. And so this idea that money is tainted or that money is by itself corrupt or corrupting or something could have been interesting. It's just spending an hour with them, watching them kind of be irresponsible and unlikable, it would just kill it immediately. That's kind of just my main thing.
Yeah. Do you know what was also frustrating is after the hour of them trying to convince us that they're like deeply in love, was the flashbacks that they were doing. I was like, you've spent an hour showing us like them like falling in love, supposedly. And then now, like when he's like become the crow, you're doing these flashback scenes, which the movie should have been doing from the first place instead of giving us what the first hour. Similar to what like John Wick did, where or like any action movie where like the wife's died and they just do these flashbacks of her running in the sun through like curtains and stuff like that, or like laundry hung up or whatever. Like your typical like nonsense of like them rolling around in the bed or whatever, like that to show that this was someone that he loved. Like it just really frustrated me that after having sat there for an hour, you then started to add that on top of that, like whilst the movie was like trying to find its feet. After that point, it really bugged me.
You can do one or the other, but not both.
Yeah, basically is what I'm trying to get.
Okay, look, I hear what you guys are saying, and I do agree. The whole love dynamic didn't work because it was a lot of just sex scenes, and that's just about it. And it's like, okay, well, this is just showing you're just showing us that this is a relationship based on lust. So it doesn't really justify how
No, I buy that they love each other. I buy that they are the only people who have ever shown each other any kind of kindness and where they can be themselves for the first time in their lives. I buy all of that. You don't need anywhere near an hour to communicate that. Like a good actors and a good script can communicate that with no dialogue in one short scene. Just give us a scene where like the second scene of the movie should have been their death, and the first scene should have been maybe them partying or something, or coming home from a party or something like that. And just showing us how much in love they are and how they complete each other and whatever. That's kind of the main thing. Like I totally buy that they're each other's soulmates, and so Eric will do anything to bring Shelley back, right? Because he has nobody else and all of that. That's all fine. It's just how much time is spent on that. I think we agree that it's just too long. And that's the problem.
I mean, I didn't like it as a whole, anyways. I didn't like any of it, but it's also too long.
What I was gonna say, like for me personally, like I didn't necessarily have an issue with it, but I do see how it can come across to other people that this is just lust, and it doesn't really kind of justify how powerful what's his name Eric's love is for Shelley, because okay, like we're really still like, for me, I didn't have an issue with it because I just said they're both broken people generally fall in love in crazy ways, you know what I'm saying? Like when they fall in love hard in comparison to people who don't have that much trauma. So for me, I didn't necessarily have an issue with the love, but I do see how other people wouldn't. Now, the reason why I didn't have an issue with this film and I felt like it was solid is because it did a good job at kind of like with the whole bringing to life the whole the atmosphere regarding, like, it was very dark, it was very moody, and I thought they brought that to life and they did a good job at doing it. That's why like the whole, like, you made a point in terms of Shelley's character was very monotone, but that kind of does fit in well with the whole dark, gloomy tone that you're setting off in the film. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, they kind of serve their purpose. Like I didn't have an issue with that character, like especially like the whole rich aspect, them being rich and having like unlimited drug fund. That was funny.
They never once worry about money, right? They just have a penthouse that they can do anything with, and apparently infinite resources. So all they do is party all day. Right, so they can, like, I don't want to belabor that point too much. It's just that doesn't fit together with how much we're supposed to pity them.
To kind of like move it on. Yeah. Another issue that I had was like part of like the contract that he had with the Crow was that it had to be like this like pure love and like this like unwavering love, like had to be like no doubt behind it or whatever. Otherwise, he would like start to lose his Crow power. And then again, I feel like this just wasn't executed properly, and I feel like the right pieces were there, And again, if they hadn't spent too much time at the start of the movie, they could have like maybe explored this a little bit further in terms of like things like unconditional love, or like how well do you like believe you know someone, how well do you like love someone to maybe trust your feelings about them over sort of what you're seeing about them. Because obviously there's this video of her stabbing her friend in the neck, and obviously like it's obviously revealed that there's like this demon guy who like made her do it basically. But part of the movie, or what could have been interesting, would have been this exploration of like, she's died, he's trying to uncover sort of this mystery of like who's sort of who's behind this, like this kind of like guy that's at the head of it. And it would have been interesting to see him like start to like find or uncover like new pieces of like Shelly's like life that he maybe wasn't aware of or didn't know too much about, or like some of the dark secrets which could have like posed or like raised questions or like made him like start to have some of that doubt about her. And then the question then becomes, how much do you know this person, or like how much do you trust knowing this person over like what you're seeing and what you're presenting, and maybe there's a bigger like narrative behind it or like that. I feel like that could have been something more interesting to explore than what they kind of chose to do with it.
Yeah, it was kind of sudden, right? Where he goes from where he loses his powers very suddenly just because he is deemed to have too many doubts. He does see that she's being manipulated in some way, right? There's, even if he doesn't know the full extent of the demon's powers, he still has a sense that there's more going on than she just stabbed somebody for the fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, this whole unconditional love thing is not terribly well defined. And second of all, it's not a terribly interesting conditions on this power set. It's not really clear why like an angel of vengeance needs to love unconditionally. Like those two things don't seem to go together really.
Yeah, I was gonna say that
and then the third one is why is this enough to strip him of his powers?
Yeah, I was gonna add to that as well. Yeah, that's kind of contradictory, because it's like contradicting, because it's like so Eric makes a deal with the devil, right?
Well, it's not clear. I didn't think it was the devil. I thought it was some
I didn't think it was the devil as well.
of...
That you lot were referring to him as the devil. So I was like, oh, he was the devil. I didn't even know what the hell he was. I thought it was just a being.
Vince guy. It was the Vince guy who's like the devil basically.
Oh, the Vincent.
Yeah, I was talking about the Vincent guy. What I think you're referring to is the guy in the kind of in this in-between dimension that gives him the powers, right?
Yeah.
That I don't think that was the devil. I think that was some third party. Like there seems to be like I don't think there's the heaven is mentioned in this at all. But kind of this is pretty like leans pretty heavily into Christian mythology. So it stands to reason that there's a heaven, there's a hell, and the guy with the crow seems to be a third party.
Yeah.
Like somebody who's beyond good and evil. It's just about vengeance and justice. And it's not, I don't think it's established who he is exactly. Like the Wikipedia page just refers to him as a spirit that guides Eric. Like he's not defined.
But then that's like another big issue with Rupert, is because he's the crow, and like you would feel like you would want to have like a good grasp or understanding as to what that is in a movie about the crow, which is basically all it's about.
Yeah.
It's not clearly defined.
I think what's important is that Eric gets a choice, right? That he can sign away his soul in order to save Shirley's, and he is essentially willing to be the most brutal and bloody he can possibly be, because the only thing that matters to him is that Shirley gets her soul back, right? And that doesn't exactly make him a hero, exactly, right? He goes after the bad guys, but he does so in like the most violent and gruesome ways, right?
There's a scene in the Opera House where he decapitates the people and he carries it in front of the audience, which is a bit wild, because he decapitates two of them and just throws the heads into the audience. Yeah.
And I think that kind of brings me back to my old pet peeve of these people are just evil because they're rich, but they've not been shown to do evil things, most of them. So you're just supposed to assume that they're bad people, and that makes everything Eric does justified. But the movie doesn't try very hard.
But I thought he did that to weed out Vincent.
He gets to his right-hand woman, right?
Yeah.
Like she's attending the opera, and so he tries to get to her, and in order to do that, he has to fight his way through the security.
Yeah, but I thought when he showed them the heads, I thought he literally just did that to like weed out Vincent. Cause I thought he was just gonna assume that Vincent was just gonna be the one to sit down.
Well, Vincent wasn't even there. He's just there to get to his number two.
Yeah, well, that's what I've assumed.
It's a bit crazy for someone that's meant to be the protagonist to be traumatizing everyone that's in the audience just to keep his goal. It's not really giving him.
But at the same time, guys, like remember, right? Because like crows, they symbolize freaking death. Well, in the Bible, they symbolize death and judgment. So he followed the theme.
He is about vengeance, right? He's not about justice. He's not about good. He's about vengeance.
Yeah, so he's a protagonist and an antagonist at the same time, in a way. You know what I'm saying? So it's like one thing that I said I did like about the film is how the crows will follow him the whole time, because like death is coming to you. Do you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, certainly the symbolism here with the crows, right? That they kind of are around when death happens, and the crow guides him to where he needs to go in order to exact vengeance on the bad people. That's absolutely the symbolism going on here.
Did you guys have any highlight moments?
So I think the middle section after he becomes the crow and before he meets up with Vincent, I think was pretty good. Like I was actually having a good time. There's like a half hour or so where he learns his powers and like the extent of his powers, and he gathers clues and he tracks down people and follows up leads, and I thought that all worked. Like I really liked how his power is not that he's strong, but he just recovers from anything, right? And he still feels the pain, and he still has to snap his bones back in place, but he will recover from anything, and so he can keep going. And that fight where he meets up with his friend for information, and then the goons break in and kill the friend, and he essentially discovers that he can't be killed, and the gunshot wounds just keep healing, and he just keeps going. I thought that was really cool. Like the use of his powers, I thought worked well. It wasn't just generic awesomeness. It was like a very specific thing. You can recover from any wound. When he gets cut with a sword or with a knife and he pushes his intestines back in, and then the wound heals up on its own. There was like an appropriate level of grittiness in this, and like the gunshot wounds, and they never heal completely, right? Every time he does this, he keeps a scar, right? So there's good stuff here. And like as he is turning into the crow, I thought that also looked stylish. Like there's a scene where he walks down like a flight of stairs, and there's fog everywhere, and there's crows flying overhead. Like that looks cool. It's not a bad looking movie, really, at least once he becomes the crow.
I was gonna actually say that in terms of like the crow design. So I've only like seen like clips or like sort of kind of stills of the first crow, sort of the original crow, and I do feel like the design with like all the tattoos and stuff like that, I do dig this a little bit more. I am like feeling the way like they've kind of designed him as a crow in this particular movie. And just to add to what you were saying, Daniel, was the moment when he gets shot by the police. I thought that was like quite a good sort of moment in the film as well, when like he just kind of like suddenly gets shot, and then the police kind of going about his business, and he obviously like he like rises because he's like can't be killed, and then they have like the whole like knife fight and stuff like that. I thought that was like a good moment in the movie.
Yeah. I do think it was a mistake to give him all these tattoos, because it made him look like the Joker, like the Jared Leto's Joker.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think it looks good. And then the makeup, I thought they had a missed opportunity, where when he goes through the final stage of his transformation and he starts crying black blood, and that kind of turns into the makeup. There's a scene where like the spirit guide kind of says something like you will cry black tears or something like that. And for a second I thought his crow makeup or his crow design was essentially his blood that had turned black, or his tears that had turned into blood and stuff like that. And that's where the mask came from. But then it was just goth makeup, and he just puts it on for no reason. Like I don't think there's any motivation for why he picks that design over something else. Like why does he disguise himself? Like is there any reason? He's already dead, and he will go to hell as soon as he fulfills his mission, right? Because that's part of the deal. So why is he disguising himself? Why is he putting on a costume?
I can't answer that one.
Right? It just feels unmotivated, right? I think it just happens because that's how it was in the comic book, and not because that's what that person would do in that moment.
I hear you about the tattoos, but I'm actually able to kind of disassociate from like different characters and stuff like that. So when I looked at him, I didn't particularly see like Jared Leto. Obviously, like you can make the comparisons and you can see it, but for me, I'm just like kind of like when I'm like looking there, I can like see it within like the lens of the movie.
I think it's an outright reference.
Yeah.
Like when you look at what the tattoos are, they are just like they're exactly like what the Joker had.
Okay, I've not done like a like comparison.
Yeah.
But if
I mean, just in terms of style and how they look and what they say and stuff like that, I would be very surprised if they didn't just use that as a template. And it's just too much, right? Like, no, it's not about him having tattoos. It's about having this many tattoos and this kind of tattoo. Anyway, like I just didn't think it was a very good design.
I agree to disagree on that one. I'm like I kind of dig I dig that a lot, but yeah, no, I can hear your point.
I was gonna say, how did you guys feel about the ending? Because personally, for me, I felt like it was rushed, and we didn't really see the full extent of Vincent's antagonist threat.
Hot garbage, I thought. So I think I'm being more charitable than most people by saying the middle section is actually quite good, even though it's just half an hour. But I think the end of it just stops making any sense whatsoever. And I'm trying to really piece together again what exactly happens because it's so confusing and nonsensical. So for one, Eric transports both of them to the train yard, right? Where, but why? Previously, he went to that limbo place every time he died, right? But why does he not need to die to go to this place? He just shoves him through a mirror. Why does that lead to the train yard? Why does he think it will lead to the train yard?
There wasn't there a line when he was making the crow properly about now you'll be able to like travel in between the worlds like they were able to do?
If they said that, I missed it.
They did say something about like him given the ability to like walk between both worlds.
Okay, and then just the last 10 minutes or so, the movie completely lost me because I didn't think anything had anything to do with each other. The way he actually defeats Vincent, I thought made no sense and had no connection to what came before. And I think Vincent also says something along the lines of we are kind of the same people or the same, or you are no better than I am or something like that, which also didn't seem to make any kind of sense. I don't know. I just thought it didn't make any sense whatsoever. It's just, it looks pretty for the most part, and then the movie ends. And I didn't find any kind of closure or like culmination of a character arc or of any kind from the final sequence. I don't know. Did you see it differently?
No, I agree. And I think you said it perfectly with like the closure part. Like there wasn't really anything to it. It was like I don't know how to explain it. It was like they were like it was just a scene where they were supposed to meet up, exchange a few words, some. Yeah, honestly, I don't know how to describe it. It just felt rushed. It felt underbaked. I don't know what exactly they were trying to do. Like it's like Vincent's character amounted to nothing because I understand like he whispered in his ear cool and he nearly got to him, but that's it. Like that's it. Like of course, like literally that's it. There wasn't anything like you said, Daniel. There wasn't anything that kind of it didn't feel cohesive with the story. It was just a separate scene on its own. It was like it's a standalone scene, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like it didn't feel like it was a payoff to anything that happened before, right? It's just the hero needs to defeat the villain, and we're at that point in the story, so we're gonna do that in a way that looks like that's what's happening. And I thought it was really stapled on, like I think the writers in this actually wanted to tell the story about the broken people in rehab who fall in love and save each other, but then they had to make a Crow movie, so they made an hour of that and then half an hour of the guy becoming the Crow, and they put in some ultra gory violence, and then they kind of stapled an ending to the end where kind of the villain gets defeated. But I didn't think those three things really hung together at all in any way.
What was frustrating as well is that they gave Vincent this like supernatural power, which from my understanding wasn't in the original movie. So they've added this element in, but it's not clear as to why they've sort of chosen to make this change or gone this route, because there isn't enough explored about it at all in this movie. You don't really understand like where it's come from, like his exact deal with the devil and stuff like that. And again, like because none of it's properly like really set up, it then doesn't really inform the satisfying, or like doesn't give the satisfying payoff of like him being defeated at the end, because he's just like generic bad guy with like the supernatural power, which no one really understands or sort of gets. And then when he's trying to like make the comparisons of like them being one of the same, it's like it kind of rings hollow because you haven't given us enough information or given us enough about it. So it's almost a case of like, did they do it because they had good ideas behind it, which then just wasn't either executed well or didn't, or was maybe cut from the final script, or have they just like made this change just to try and fit with like have like this equal antagonist to the Crow, basically?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more charitable to it than you are.
Mhm.
I like it when heroes and villains are kind of mirror images of each other, and the idea that both of them made a deal with a higher power, but
Yeah.
for very different reasons, with very different effects. In principle, is interesting, right? That Vincent makes a deal with the devil in order to enrich himself and kind of delay the inevitable, right? Which is one day he will die and then he will be held accountable for his actions. And then Eric makes a deal with some entity for ultimately selfish reasons, right? He doesn't do it out of altruism. He's not a hero in this. He just wants the woman he loves back. Which is not good exactly, right? It's primarily selfish. I think that those two things kind of mirror each other, right? That they both make deals with higher powers, but in different ways and for different reasons and with different results. And I think that potentially is interesting. I just didn't feel like the story was about that.
Yeah, so that was basically that was my issue. So I don't
Yeah.
disagree with what you're kind of like saying at the start. It's just like it was added in there, but then it wasn't focused on enough to like really give us anything from it. Was my issue
Yeah.
with, and which kind of goes back to what I said at the very start, is that there's components of like good stuff in this movie, but that are just not explored deep enough at all. And I feel like this movie definitely could have been better if it like spent a little bit more time, sort of, exploring some of these things as opposed to sort of wasting the first hour, essentially.
Yeah. Like freeing up an hour of screen time would have certainly helped expanding on these ideas. And also, if you had made the movie about that, then there could have been an opportunity for Vince to try to corrupt Eric, right?
Mhm.
Where if he's already making a deal with a higher power for selfish reasons, then maybe you can get him to make another deal for different reasons, right? And maybe that makes him susceptible for recruitment or something, right? Like you can imagine things going on there that
Like tempting
would make the story more interesting, right? Like maybe there's another way to get Shelly back. Maybe if he delivers him 5 innocent souls, that's enough to bring Shelly back, for example. And maybe he's tempted, and maybe he thinks that's the only thing that matters. But then he discovers that his conscience gets in the way. For the first time, he has a conscience because for the first time he's not just trying to survive or something. Like you can imagine stuff going on here, even if it's not technically what The Crow is about. Like just with that kind of framework, you can imagine interesting things happening, and they didn't really because they didn't have any time.
So Daniel, you mentioned before that you tried to watch the original, but you couldn't finish it. Why was that? Wasn't it good?
Because I was sick and I was falling asleep.
As in, like you were
So it wasn't
tired, or
about the
was it got
movie.
you
I
bored?
just couldn't stay awake. I physically couldn't stay awake. I tried to watch the movie and I just couldn't.
How far into it did you get?
Maybe half an hour.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about the movie is that I actually kind of thought the first half hour was kind of boring. But every time I saw a review or discussion of The Crow, they showed clips from the movie and it looks really awesome. So there must be a bunch of really cool scenes later on in the movie that are the reason why this is so popular. And I just never got to them. But I don't think this movie really captures that.
I feel like we've maybe bashed it too much. Tell us why you thought it was a solid movie, or like what you enjoyed kind of most out of it. Because I feel like we've
And I've got more, by the way, if we have time. But yeah. Go for it.
Because I know, I think the trailer told me what I was gonna get, and I got it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there wasn't anything out the ordinary. Like it's pretty much like the storyline was clear. I think I even saw some people trying to say it was meandering. I said no, it wasn't. Like it was pretty much clear to the point. Like the guy's girlfriend died, and he made a deal with some sort of a being. I don't know what the hell that being was, and now he's on a revenge spree. Like literally. So it was like it fulfilled its purpose. It did what it had to do. Like the fight scenes in it was amazing. Not amazing, but they were really good fight scenes, especially in the whole what was it, Opera House or whatever they were, where they were at. Even like in the beginning, like even the scene where you said where the police officer, where he just realized that she had powers then, so that scene was amazing as well. So for me, I just think, like I said, I didn't say it was a great movie. I just said they got the tone correct. It was dark. Like literally, the trailer tells you what you're gonna get, and it's very rare, not rare, but a lot of the times trailers like hype up the movie, and it kind of gives you like an over expectation of what you're gonna receive. This one, it pretty much did its job. Like, it says this is what you're gonna get, and I felt like that's what I got. So
it's a combination of a few different things. One of them is that the 1994 movie is like really beloved, right? A lot of people really like that movie, and also famously the actor who played the Crow in that one died on set. He was kind of shot by a prop gun that kind of went off, and they kind of finished the movie from B-roll basically. So it's got this like legendary air or aura surrounding it, where like a lot of people seem like the idea for a lot of people seems to be like, this guy died making this movie and now you are kind of dragging it through the mud for money, right? And I don't quite see it that way. Like, a 30-year-old movie can be remade and it can be a different take on the same story, whatever. But it's just a cult classic for many people that people have loved for a long time, and then something comes along and just makes a cheap imitation of it. And I can kind of see people not liking it, right? But I don't really see it as that bad, where it's so terrible. Like, this made zero money, right? Like, it's like box office is under 5 million at this point, which is, I didn't even think was physically possible. Like, you can always find somebody to go to a movie, right? This is just being rejected even more than Borderlands was. There's another aspect, I think, of why this movie doesn't work for many people, and that is, I think The Crow is very rooted in 90s culture, especially 90s kind of counterculture, goth culture, techno culture, that kind of thing. Like, this whole alienated youth kind of being lost and being consumed by crime and drugs and alienation and abandonment and all of these things seems all very 90s to me. Like, that is something that was in the zeitgeist at the time, and I don't think it is today. Like, that's not something I associate with like early 20 somethings, right? Like, not just leave aside the fact that goth is not a thing anymore, and so the goth look, like, they have to use the goth look because that's the character design from 30 years ago, but that is not youth culture today, right? I've not seen any goths in like 15 years at least, right? They were really big when I was growing up in Germany in the early 2000s. Like, everybody was goth, and I've not seen it in a long time. It does not seem to exist, and somehow this guy is goth, right? Like, or even just aesthetically, like, it just doesn't ring true. And then this whole, like, it's not how I imagine Gen Z doing things. It seems like 30 years out of place, and that makes it less believable, and that makes it less relatable, and that makes the whole thing, like, that doesn't automatically break it, but I think it makes it harder. And I don't think the movie delivers enough for people to look over that. Like, it just feels off. Like, it's in the generational uncanny valley, right? Where it's not quite right, and it doesn't really ring true, but the movie still asks us to believe it.
Do you think they should have done more of a vigilante approach? As in, for example, like, because I'm sure there was more people like Vincent, right? So we saw only two of them. I'm pretty sure there was more of them. Do you think like, the story could have gone into a direction where now it's become more like, first it's about Shelley, but it could become more, it could have expanded to like a different story where he's now going out to kill all of them, of people like Vincent. That would have made it a bit interesting. I think that's the
obvious sequel potential, right? That it's not just Shelley that needs saving, it's more people. And I read something about how they changed this ending. Was supposed to be something different originally, and then they changed it so that it's open for sequels, which are not going to happen now.
Yeah, because people were saying how this was supposed to be some sort of franchise star, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think it's big enough for that.
But like it leaves room open at the end. Like, if this had been a success, or at least marginal success, then you could have told more stories, right, with this guy going, like, avenging more people. So one other question I wanted to bring up is, this is the second movie in a month that gets completely rejected by audiences, right? First we had Borderlands a few weeks ago, and now we have this. One thing that Borderlands and The Crow have in common is that they are adaptations of older things that people like, and they are low quality, but then they get a backlash that I think is way out of proportion to what the quality actually warrants. Like, both of them, I think, are bad, but they are not the worst thing ever. They're kind of like normal amounts of bad, where if you really like Borderlands or The Crow, I can see being disappointed or being upset that it's not what you imagined it to be or something. That's totally fair. But the discourse is, these are the worst things ever, and like this needs to crash and burn. This is an outrage. This is an insult to the fans, and I don't see it as being that bad. But it's now happened twice in 1 month. What's that about?
It seems like it's a rejection of some of the certain things that are becoming like standard or status quo in like Hollywood in some of the movies that we're getting, in terms of like the low quality writing that we're getting in a lot of movies, and then they like it. I mean, it's not the first time like this has happened. Like when people are like heavily invested in something. I mean, you had like the whole like backlash to like season 8 of Game of Thrones and stuff, and it's just like people have like high expectations. People like hold these things like really dear to their heart, and like they just don't want to see it just like cheapened or taken for granted. And I just feel like we're just at a point where maybe it's happened one too many times, and like it's just like everyone's now at a point where like anytime like something goes wrong, it just seems like it's the I'm trying to find like the right words for it, but it just seems like people have like kind of like reached a certain point or like certain like threshold of like shit that they've taken, and it's like now that every time like something comes that doesn't hit the bar or like doesn't like even like remotely come close to what people are expecting, then like it just hits the fan, and people like really reject it, or like really like are like outspoken for the dislike of it. And I hear it, like I hear it. Like if there was like if like there was something that I like loved so much.
I mean, I was kind of at that point 5 years ago, right? With Game of Thrones, with the DCEU, with and after that with the MCU, where for a long time I was really distraught at how terrible these things were, and how much wasted opportunity there was, and you could imagine what could have been if these things had been handled properly, and all of these things, right? But that was 5 years ago, and 5 years ago, that effect was much less pronounced. Like people hated on these movies and whatever, but it wasn't as like these things still made money, right? Or at least made a decent amount of money. And this just complete, and these two things just completely crash and burn. And it's pretty unanimous. It's not like there's two factions. One of them thinks The Crow is the best thing ever, and one of them thinks it's the worst thing ever, and they hate each other on the internet, right? It's not that. That is not happening. There don't seem to be many defenders of either Borderlands or The Crow, and so like everybody seems to be united in their hatred for, or at least rejection of these things.
I agree and I disagree. I disagree that films like original movies in the past shouldn't be changed in the future. You know what I'm saying? Because I think sometimes you need to kind of like, you know, remake something which is, I wouldn't say suitable, but something which today's generation can watch and enjoy and engage in. However, Daniel, you made a point where you said, okay, this film still felt like it was stuck in the 90s. So I'm not really too familiar with the 90s. So if that's the case, then it's like, okay, well, they didn't really do a good job at creating something new, which is going to kind of like engage the, the new audience. In terms of the other point that I made about changing something that doesn't need to be changed. So if it's a thing where the original Crow, because clearly that was so loved. So if it's a thing clearly that worked, so it was like, okay, you still could have remade it that same way with some changes where it makes it more like it makes it relevant to today's time, but you could have still kept like the essence of the original film in this movie because it worked then. So surely it should work now, and you're reintroducing it to a new audience. So yeah, so that's why I'm a bit like I'm for and against the whole being against to change, but at the same time not being against it, if that makes sense.
I think both The Crow and Borderlands failed to give their audience something compelling, right? So there's nothing that balances out the bad aspects of it, like how bad some of it looks, or like in Borderlands specifically how cheap everything looks and how uninspired it is. And in the case of The Crow, how unlikable the main character is, and how much time is spent on uninteresting things. But there's no narrative that you can latch onto for both of them where you can say, okay, this is why this works, or this is why this is a good change. Whereas with other things that have been more controversial, there are at least two sides to it, and here it seems like there aren't sides, or no, there isn't more than one side, where it's just bad, or at least nobody has come forward to champion another perspective on these. Like, and we are kind of the radicals for saying both of them are only pretty bad, and that's it, right? Like that already makes us like at the far end of the spectrum for opinions about these things, and that's about as far as it gets.
Do you know what? I don't think that these two projects had the same goodwill that some of the Marvel movies or like some of the other more established franchise have had. Because yeah, people revolted about season 8 of Game of Thrones, but there's, you know, people that would defend it would be people that have seen 7 seasons of Game of Thrones previously and have like a goodwill towards it. Whereas like, and again, like the Marvel movies, even I to an extent can look past some of the issues with some, like with a lot of the Marvel movies like Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania or whatever, because of like the goodwill and because of like the feelings I have for the franchise overall. And, you know, in a situation like Star Wars, where I feel like they've burnt out their goodwill by sort of, you know, kind of like producing bad content after bad content for too long a period, where now it's overwhelmingly negative on their side, which is why you get the reaction that you get to the Acolyte on their side of things. And you kind of like start to get some people that try to sort of, you know, do the same with like Marvel projects, you know, with like She-Hulk and stuff like that, where they try to be a little bit too extreme on it. But I feel like it's more pronounced on these two latest projects. It's just because there isn't that goodwill behind it. It's sort of, no, it's stuff that, you know, doesn't have, like, for Borderlands, for example, the people love it. The people that love it because of the video games, not because of the movies. And if you then make a movie that completely changes everything and doesn't give the same feeling as sort of, you know, as video games, you've already marginalized that audience on that side. And then, of course, if it's not a good movie, then the actual like moviegoers and the critics aren't gonna like it either. And similar to the Crow, there'll be people that, you know, enjoyed the sort of the first movie, the first one that came out, and again probably felt like they didn't need to have the remake and this and the other. So already maybe had like some bad feelings going into the movie, and then the movie not being great just kind of like confirmed some of those feelings for them, which then leads to such a rejection of it. It just seems like anything that's like new or like trying to establish a new franchise has to like almost try and play it safe and not take too many risks, or you have to really like knock it out of the park, or just be like a solid movie. Like you can't miss badly on your first attempt, because if there's people that have, I don't know, a love for like a different iteration of it, you're gonna find it very difficult to kind of get those people on side.
I agree with the idea that you have to get people on board first.
Hmm.
And then if quality slips, then some people will stay on board no matter what. Yeah, so maybe if this had been Borderlands 4 or the Crow 4, then the discourse would have been different. Like if the first 3 were really good and then it started to go downhill or something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's it. But it's not like people are rejecting franchises, right? Like
No.
the big successes of recent weeks are Deadpool and Alien Romulus, right? Which are very safe, high quality sequels, right? That make it easy to be excited about it and to find something to like.
Yeah.
And both of them know what their core audience likes, right? They're like Deadpool and Alien respectively are very different things, but they have like a core appeal that these movies really get to and really deliver. And if you are on board with these things, then you get that from those two things. The same wasn't true from The Crow and Borderlands, so maybe that's just it. I'm just surprised by how complete and unanimous it is.
Yeah, I have.
Like, we're not getting video essays with hot takes about how The Crow is secretly genius, right? Maybe we'll get that like in 2 years or something, or in 5 years or 10 years. But so far we haven't. Like nobody's, you know, died on that hill so far.
Yeah.
And like in the past, like when something came out, like if you really dislike The Last Jedi, right, which I do, then you can find easily people who will champion that movie and who will talk for hours about how it's the most brilliant Star Wars movie ever made. No such thing exists for Borderlands or The Crow, right? And that's what surprises me.
Yeah, I was going to say the most recent example I can even think of is House of the Dragon season 2, which I feel like as the season was going on, people kind of started to realize that we wasn't getting the season that we were expecting. But again, it wasn't that same.
Still has its defenders, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which I was going to say, it didn't have that fierce backlash that these two sort of projects have had, and that's because we got such a great season 1, and people love season 1 so much that season 2 might have slipped in quality, but people are willing to sort of kind of like invest back into the world, and I'm sure like those people, the same people, will check out season 3 because it might sort of kind of give the promise that season 2 kind of failed to deliver on, essentially. So that was just like one of like the most recent examples that I could think of like something that didn't hit the quality that it should have, but also didn't get the same.
More polarizing as opposed to being outright rejected.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of struck out to me because I don't really believe that this is like the turning point at which people suddenly become like very critical and very demanding in terms of quality and just start rejecting bad work en masse, right? Because that's not like even bad movies tend to still make a decent amount of money. And I'm still not emotionally still not over the fact that Madam made $100 million, and like that just like is kind of an exhibit of no matter how bad your movie is, millions of people will still go, and the same has just not been true for these. And I don't know. It feels like a tipping point. I just don't know in what direction and towards what. I can't really believe that it's like everybody's suddenly become a hypercritical consumer of movies. But it's a turning point towards something.
Yeah,
And I think maybe in 2-3 years we will see what that something is. But right now it's not visible yet.
Yeah, because even saying like people being hypercritical about it, you would still expect maybe like a good first week out of of a new movie, like for the movie to make decent numbers in the first week, and then if it's sort of overwhelmingly bad, then that number to kind of like tail off, and you have like these like massive drop offs in the box office in like the second or third week, where it just seems like people aren't even giving it a chance. If you're saying that The Crow's made under 5 million in its first week, then it kind of goes to show that people, or like there was something that happened beforehand which has already turned off a lot of the their target audience from going to see that movie, it seems.
It had something to do with, well, I assume it had something to do with Rotten Tomatoes, where I don't know what happened, but they weren't showing the reviews of the movie until after the
So the review embargo for Borderlands was, I think, the day of the release, and for The Crow it was like 4 hours after the premiere or something, which basically means it's a stinker. But yeah, I think that's an important point, that this movie got rejected before anybody had seen it. I think it got rejected from the first trailer, and the narrative about it from the beginning was, this is terrible, and it's a dumpster fire. Nobody should watch it. It's and I think that's been vindicated, right? It's not this great movie that got a bad rap and then died at the box office because of first impressions. This is actually a bad movie. I don't know if it's a good thing that people are making up their minds before they've seen it, or before somebody has seen it. Right? It's not like you said, it's not like this had a strong first weekend because people kind of are into The Crow, and then word got out how bad it is, and then it crashed and burned in the second weekend, right? It crashed and burned before the premiere. And I don't know that it's actually good.
No, definitely not. I wouldn't say.
Because what if it had been good and then nobody gave it a chance?
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like this makes movies even more risky. And if this continues, maybe studios will become even more safe in what they make and how they promote things. And maybe the review embargoes will get even stricter, because they, like, you just have to gamble that the hive mind doesn't turn against you before your premiere and just kills your project outright. Like what do you do as a film studio in that environment where they could pull a Crow or Borderlands on your movie before anybody's even seen it?
Just make better movies, make better movies, and make better trailers. Or like I don't know. They need to think how they make the trailers, because I do believe the Borderlands trailer and the Crow trailer were both heavily criticized in terms of like the look and the feel of it when they were out, and again, that's not a good sign. That's already like kind of turning away like a lot of the audience from the get go, to be honest. So hopefully they learn to make more quality things, because you said the people weren't wrong about the two movies. I don't think people were wrong about the two movies. So hopefully they learn.
But I mean, the thing is, like, we've got Craven coming out. I think it's been moved to December, I think, at the time of recording. So that might have changed by the time this gets uploaded. But I don't know, the trailer doesn't look great, but it also looks like there could be a decent movie in there. And I'm not gonna make up my mind until somebody sees it. Like I don't have to necessarily see it myself, but I'd at least pay attention to whether it's actually good or bad.
Yeah.
But everybody seems to have already made up their mind that it's terrible because it's a Craven movie, it's a Sony Spider-Verse movie, because it follows up from Madam Web and all of these things. But like, I think if you watch the trailer, you can see kind of bits and pieces of a halfway decent movie in there, and which still might mean it ends up being bad, but we don't know until we see it.
That goes back to the goodwill part as well, is that Sony haven't built up that goodwill. Sony have built up a reputation of not producing good movies. So that,
Yep.
and I feel like that affects people's perception of when they're viewing these trailers as well, is that like, when Sony are putting out the Craven trailer, is people are looking for things that will make the movie bad, or like looking for signs that the movie's going to be bad, as opposed to looking for signs to be excited about, or to understand that the movie's going to be a great movie, essentially. So
Yeah.
part of its reputation, and part of it is so like for Sony as an example, is that they need to do a lot of work to kind of change the way that people perceive their movies, because I actively avoided the trailer for Craven because I didn't want to have that negative perception of the trailer and of the movie. So I actively didn't watch it, and I'm just kind of like waiting to see it when it comes out. But they just they just need to do something to change the reputation, because I know that if I watch the trailer, I probably would have watched it with with the mindset of like, this is probably going to be bad, and would have like looked to pick out the bad things in that trailer.
Yeah, and I have zero expectations, but just having seen the trailer, it looks okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, but that's just my example of something that's coming up. We have no idea if it's going to be good or not, and everybody already has an opinion about it.
Mhm.
Right. And it's not just because Sony just makes trash and this is Sony, therefore it's trash. Like, that's at least a logical argument. I'm just saying, I think people seem to be very quick to form an opinion, and it's also like what the crowd thinks.
Mhm.
Like, it seems to be, it's more about hating on a movie together as opposed to trying to figure out if this is a good movie or not.
Mhm.
That kind of seems to be in the mix as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, on the one hand, I'm happy to see bad work fail. On the other hand, I'm not sure this is a positive trend, depending on how far people take this and how and where exactly it goes, which I think it's too early to tell. But it's kind of just an observation, because it's happened twice now in 1 month, and that makes it a little bit more than just a fluke.
Daniel, it seems like you've won, but at what cost is basically what you're saying, in terms of.
Yeah, it's like a real monkey paw moment, right? People are doing what I want them to do, but am I, or are they?
At what cost? What's the unknown?
Yeah, so like we'll keep an eye on this and then see what happens with this. But it seems to be just a change in terms of how people are engaging with movies and what they will accept from studios, which in principle is good thing, but this can be taken too far or in the wrong direction. But we'll see.
All right, guys. I think it's time for last sports. Oh, is there anything else that you guys want to add?
No, I think we've covered it.
Yeah, we've been working for a while.
All right, cool. What's your last sports, guys?
Last Sports, another example of, and this is kind of common trend on movies this year. It seems like another movie that probably had some good elements in there that weren't realized in the best way possible, not executed well, which leads to it just not being an overall enjoyable movie, which is a shame, because there was like stuff in there that could have been interesting, but it just didn't stick to landing. So I'd give it maybe a 3 out of 10, 3.5 maybe out of 10. No, that could actually go down. I just thought about the first hour of that movie again, and that was a weird choice, odd choice to go with. But yeah, we'll go 3 out of 10.
For me, I still think it's a solid film. First act, not so great, and last act with like the whole showdown between Vincent and Crow and Eric wasn't so great either. But I do agree with Daniel in terms of like the middle part was very strong for me, and like I'm saying, the action sequence was very good as well for me too. Overall, I had a solid experience. Wouldn't ask for a refund. I'd give this a 6. I'd give it a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think the first hour kills it. Middle part is pretty good and is pretty weak. Not something I would recommend really to anybody. So it's a 5 out of 12 for me. Like, just not the worst, but not good enough.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning into today's episode. Heavy?
Yeah, let us know. Are you the one person that actually likes the Crow movie? Actually, there's 2 people, because obviously we got Jonathan here who gave it 6 out of 10. So, are you one of 2 people that actually like the Crow movie? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We're on the road to 100 subscribers, a humble 100. So, yeah, join us on our journey. We're obviously going on to do more and more things.
Yes, guys, join us. Don't be a hater. But we will catch you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye bye.